So just to be official,
Yeah.
what's your name?
Brandon.
Brandon Elijah.
Elijah.
Nice
Good
to meet you, Brandon.
Right on.
And I have your permission to post this on YouTube and other media purposes.
If you'd like, say, well, give me the cure. And if you're, able to see the X-rays, you know what I mean. You can make a much more objective decision.
So, Brandon, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I want to show you some spiritual X-rays,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to see what you think of
A
this.
spiritual X-ray.
Spiritual X-rays. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm listening to this.
Brandon,
X-ray.
how many lies have you told in your life?
Oh my gosh. How many lies have I told in my life?
In your whole life?
Oh my! I think I would have to say, I practice a little Buddhism. Not a little, a lot.
I was saying, I might have to sit down with you. I'm not going to turn because I want to keep her
I
from the sun.
practice a lot of Buddhism. So from that point, I would say that the majority of my life has been a lie and lived in delusion, right? So, but as far as deliberate lies, oh my God, you can't even count. I'm 53.
So what do we typically call somebody who tells lies? What kind of name?
A liar.
Have you ever stolen anything, irregardless of value? It could have been a pencil in school, could have been change from mom's purse when you were a kid.
Yes, I stole a pack of bubble gum, 25-cent bubble gum, when I was, oh my God, I don't know, 10 or something.
What do we typically call somebody who steals?
You call them a thief.
This one gets a little more dicey.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus said that if you look at a woman with lust, you've committed adultery with her in your heart. Mm-hmm. Have you, as a man, ever looked at a woman with lust?
Of course.
Okay. And so Jesus says that we're adulterers at heart. Mm-hmm. You ever been angry at somebody without a cause?
No.
Not they cut you off on the highway and...
Well, that's a cause.
Fair. But enough to
You mean angry at somebody who doesn't slap you?
Sure.
Sure, yeah, of course, yeah.
Always honored mom and dad?
Always, absolutely.
Ever since you were never a naughty kid?
I still, 53 years old, do not curse in front of my parents.
You were the perfect, ideal poster child.
If you were to talk to my parents, they might have had some questions with my older decisions, just decision making. Sure. But as far as me as a person, no, they would have no problem with saying like, no, he's been good.
Well, Brandon, so the spiritual X-rays would say you've admitted to lying, to stealing, to lusting, yeah. Right? So it would be a liar, a thief, and an adulterer at heart. Now, if God judges you based on those X-rays, mm-hmm. and what we went through was the 10 Commandments, mm-hmm. we looked at 4 of them, maybe 5. Mm-hmm. If God looks at those X-rays, would he find you innocent or guilty based on those?
Innocent.
Why innocent?
Because God is the most compassionate and loving. Now, I understand that you're a Christian and you have a different perspective on this, but, in my conception, what we're talking about is the infinite. And what we're talking about is infinite compassion and infinite love, right? And I don't think, as far as the life that I have lived, speaking of me personally, I haven't killed anyone, right? I don't think that infinite compassion and infinite love is going to say, you know what, that bubble gum that you stole when you were 10, I'm going to have to hold that against you.
And Brandon, I think that it's an easy observation to make.
Yeah.
However, I think even our earthly judges, you would say, well, judge, but I mean, I'm a good person, or I do these things. And I mean, yeah, I've done those kinds of things, but I help the elderly and I've changed my ways. And the judge is going to say, well, I'm glad you did those things, but those don't answer
why you stole the piece of gum. Right.
But what's more is God, the infinite, as you said, mm-hmm. sees from a completely different perspective than we do. It's why he says that all liars shall have their part in the lake of fire. You and I would well, that's a white lie. We were trying to protect them. We see it as not that bad. Mm-hmm. But compared to a holy, infinite, righteous God, mm-hmm. it's sin. It's wicked. And so what he should give us mm-hmm. for breaking the 10 Commandments is what?
Compassion.
Divine justice, right?
I believe in divine
I think that is, so compassion is dealing out justice, because if a judge just lets a criminal go who raped and murdered 3 women, and he's like, but I just want to show compassion, you would rightfully be just outraged. You'd say that's evil, that's wrong. Why would you just let him go that for what he's done? So that judge, by dealing out justice, is also showing compassion on the family of that victim. And see, they're married together, justice and compassion.
Absolutely, I agree.
Do you think God should do the same?
I think, well, I have a really different conception, right?
Sure.
Because, I mean, 30 years ago, I was raised Catholic. And when I began my spiritual journey, I really started with the Bible. So I read it, and then I started reading the Quran, and then Taoism, and Hinduism, and on and on and on. I'm a student of the spirit, so um, I think one of the most critical things is for us to be able to dissolve our giving God personage, right? Like He would relate to any way that we understand reality, right? And see reality the way that we see it, right? So to be able to really step into the mind of God is really impossible, right? So I have to, from my point of view, in a most humble, subservient way of observing, um, respect that I have to be very mindful of how I behave, right? How I attend to my own thoughts, my own behavior, and in that activity, that allowing myself to become closer to the infinite, right? So that these things that we do that back us up in our spiritual walk um,
Brandon, do
don't
you
necessarily trip us up in our ability to move forward further in our closer relationship.
think, because you said about concept of understanding God's thoughts or how he thinks, do you think that we can look at a painting and know something about the mind of the painter?
Definitely not.
Why, how so?
I mean, that's what the painter was feeling in that moment, which is a collection of whatever their experiences were at that moment. So
Sure, if you
I
go through
wouldn't be able
the
to. I wouldn't be able to know what they were thinking.
But if you go through an art museum and you see an art of, let's say, the Edmund Fitzgerald, and it's in on the stormy seas and it's getting ready to get overflow, you can tell that the painter took his time, and the style and the ink he used and the canvas and the type of style of artwork that he chose to paint. You can learn something about the painter by looking at the painting. So, in the same sense, I would say, look at these trees, look at this grass, look at this beautiful sunset. We can learn something about the Creator. Mind you, we may not see our need for salvation or our need or our guilt of sin, but we can look at and go, this God is intricate. He's built this created this tree that's so intricately made in the root system, and it goes down as high as the tree is tall. And you look at the grass, and it's like a beautiful carpet for us to walk on, and the beautiful colors of the sky of a sunset. We can look at all these things and go, they're beautiful, they're majestic, they speak to order and purpose and intelligence. And so we can learn something about the mind and the character of God.
Right. I hear that. But in the way that you describe that, which is beautiful, and that's why I spend a lot of time in nature, generally every day. But even more so, I think that describes the incomprehensibility and unknowability of the Most High, because this is only what you described was not even a percentage of the creation, right?
Fair, and I'll give you that, because if we could understand everything about God, of course, then he wouldn't be God, or we would be level with God, of course.
Absolutely.
But we can understand enough to look at creation, and then with what we went through earlier, which is your conscience, and your conscience would go, yeah, I've done those things. I'm not, yeah, oh, that's, and what happens is that we can start to go, I have this sense of this divine. I have this sense of spirituality. Where did that come from? Why am I here? The basic questions of life. And we can look around and go, if creation was so intricately and purposefully made, if there's a tree maker, there must be a people maker. And if there's a people maker, then I must be here for a reason. And if I'm here for a reason, then that means there's a purpose to life. And then if I'm going to die one day, there must be something after death. And those are natural thoughts that we think, and so those, I believe, The Christian God, I believe, answers those questions through the Bible, through the person and work of Jesus Christ. For instance, I can look at my conscience tells me, yeah, you're guilty. You break all of God's laws, and if God is holy and righteous and just, he must punish sin. And so therefore I should get the eternal death sentence, separation from God in hell. But what he has done is taken that penalty for me so that both justice and, as you mentioned earlier, compassion and kindness can be exercised without the loss of the other. And so you have both of them married together through God pouring his wrath out on his son. And so his son was innocent, received the wrath and judgment that I deserve. Therefore, justice has been served, while also mercy and compassion, because I didn't get what I do deserve. So therefore, God can forgive me and take me to heaven when I die, not because of anything I've done, but because of everything that he's done. And so he can be forever glorified, and we can go, God, it's by nothing I've done, but everything that you've done. And so he doesn't once stop being divine or holy, but he also can give me what I don't deserve. And for that, he doesn't want a fear-filled convert. He wants a tear-filled convert. And I should go, God, you're worthy of all praise, and I deserve nothing, but you've given me everything. You've given me your only son.
Well,
That's the Christian gospel.
That is the Christian gospel.
I take it you don't agree with the Christian gospel.
I was raised Catholic, and my dad's Baptist, my mom's Catholic. Majority of my family, I would say, is Christian, and I've studied it enough where I believe firmly that people were given certain spiritual practices and understanding because God is an infinite, loving, compassionate God, right? There's so many different ways for you to be able to reach the Most High and to learn about the Most High. So through the life of Jesus, beautiful. I think it's amazing, right? Through the life of Buddha, great. I think that's amazing too. Lao Tzu, Muhammad, Moses, on and on and on.
Do you know what sets them all apart, though?
I'm going to listen to what you think sets them all apart.
Because at the core of all of them, Jesus is the only one that declared the definite article of, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. He also spoke more on hell than he did heaven. He did that to show them, hey, I'm warning you. But also, if you look at Muhammad, if you look at Buddha, if you look at Confucius, all of those men, they said that this is a way, but at the end of their lives, they all died in uncertainty. Especially too, you look at, they didn't have it.
I wouldn't be able to make that judgment, but
Based on if you've ever studied the last words, people say some interesting things before they die, and their very last words. The Bible speaks that out of the heart, the mouth speaks. Abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Jesus said that it's not what goes into you that defiles you, but what comes out. Why? Because your words are a reflection of what's in your heart. If you look at the last final words of all of these men, you find that some of them even recanted what they believed, or they just weren't sure in what they believed, or they tried to reach for something that they ultimately didn't end up attaining. But Jesus is the only one that said, no, I'm not a way. I don't know about a certain way. I am the way. And because of that claim, he said, you can't earn it. You can't work for it. You can't be as righteous as the law demands. I'm doing that for you. And I think that's what sets it apart, is because it's a gospel of grace, right? Grace is us getting what we don't deserve, and mercy is us not getting what we do deserve. And that is at the core of the Christian faith. So,
well, I appreciate your proselytizing. I appreciate your understanding and your commitment, because I think one of the most important things in a spiritual life of a person is commitment and devotion. I really appreciate the life of Jesus. I really do. I think it's a very fine example. Love God with all your heart, soul, and might. Love your brother as you love yourself. I think these are very easy commandments to follow. And
I fall short with them every day, by the way.
Oh, well, love is something that comes easy for me, and compassion. I give love, I give compassion, but and I appreciate those values. I just don't think that there's ever been one way, um, and one approach. And I think in honoring and loving all of the diversified approaches, we get a wider, better appreciation of the Most High. So, as much as I respect the life of Jesus, how it has influenced my life, um, Martin Luther King, Martin Luther King Jr., who lived the word, and made incredible sacrifices as a high example of that path. Affected so many different lives, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm just not a Christian.
So, Brandon, would you say that we can leave here today friends, even though we disagree?
Absolutely.
Well, it was a pleasure talking with you,
Yes.
and I appreciate your perspective.
I appreciate you.
One thing I will leave you with is that Jesus said, "What does it profit a man that he gain the whole world but lose his own soul?"
Absolutely.
We think we focus on the love of God, but it's because he's loving that he's also very just and holy. So just maybe something to think about. And in fact, if you wouldn't mind, we have could I give you one of these?
Absolutely.
This has scientific facts in the Bible. I know you said you've read the Bible. Maybe you have a Bible at home, do you?
I do.
Okay.
Amazing truths written thousands of years before man discovered them.
Yes, sir. And look, if you want to,
Okay.
there's our channel card. So
your channel.
so we're not just some strangers that showed up out of nowhere. You can follow us and
Elijah.
Lord willing, have some more conversations.
Is your name Elijah?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you even got a holy name.
Well, I fall short of every day.
Don't we all?
So
yeah.